Hey everyone, and we're live. Welcome to the September edition of Sitrion Talks. This is our monthly online chat where we talk about topics that we think might be interesting to some of our customers or their friends, people out there in the world who want to hear us yabber away on YouTube. It's really meant to be an open session, and even though you can't be here talking with us and your microphone isn't on, the Q&A is turned on, and we can see that here. All of the panelists today will have access to it, and we want to try and answer as many questions as we can during the talk. So if you have a question, send it through. The delay, I think, to YouTube is about 30 seconds. So if you think of something that you want to ask, fire it off. We'll get back to you. We are using the hashtag #SitrionTalks. If you're on Twitter, jump online and share the story. All of the guests today have got their Twitter handle at the bottom of the screen. Actually, most of them do. We're having a few technical issues, but we're gonna get there. So I want to introduce my panelists today. We've got Hillary Boucher, we've got Ted Hopton, and Patrick Hellen. Hi guys, how are you?
Hey.
Everybody. It's stuck on me. There we go. I thought to kick off the session, we should, rather than me tell everyone who you are and what you do and why you're awesome, I thought I'd ask you guys to do that for me. So Hillary, why don't we start with you?
Sure. So as Luke said, my name's Hillary Boucher, and I am the community manager at the Community Roundtable. And so what I do is I manage a private peer network of community managers. So it is rather like herding cats.
Hey.
And I get to work with all awesome community practitioners, social business leaders in the space across industries. It's awesome.
Patrick, how about over to you?
Sure. So I am Patrick Hellen. I am the community manager for Cloudlock, which is a cloud security company. I am actually just launching a community right now. We're actually in the process of putting it together and coming out with it. Pretty much this week, we're actually announcing a lot of it for this particular time frame. But at my last job, I was also a security community manager and did a lot of online collaboration, mostly focused on customer issues. So customers that are trying to solve the same issues, kind of putting them in a position where they can collaborate together.
And Ted, did we sort out your audio issues? Can we hear you? No, I can't hear you. If Ted manages to sort out the audio, we'll definitely get back to him and include him in the conversation as well. For those of you who haven't tuned in to Sitrion Talks before, I'm Luke Sinclair, and I'm a Director of Community Management here at Sitrion. And I also look after a network similar to Hillary's. Mine is our customer network. So we have a collection of all of our customers. I call them some of the brightest minds in enterprise social business, and they all come to our customer network and they connect and share, collaborate, get support and help with our tool at Sitrion. I've been a community manager for about 4.5 years now. Prior to my career here, I was actually the enterprise community manager for a large corporate finance and wealth management company called AMP down in Sydney, Australia. And there I managed to grow their online collaboration platform and tool, which was powered by initially Yammer and now by NewsGator and Sitrion. I'm really interested to know from the panelists what kind of career path led you here. I mean, you don't really go, or at least certainly when I was starting out my career, I didn't go to study community management at college or at university. There was no courses in community management, and I really just kind of like through a matter of circumstances kind of led to this being the natural next step for me to kind of land in a community management job. So really interested in hearing from you guys sort of how you got here as well. Who wants to go first? Patrick, you go first this time.
Okay. Similar to you, I didn't kind of plan for this, let's say. I was a English major, of all things, in college, mostly because my father gave me the advice that you should take something that you can pass with straight A's, because if you do that, you can probably worry about the job thing after. So I did that. But technology was kind of an overall tying point for me. So I had a lot of interest in technology, and I had a lot of interest in technology companies. So I actually ended up being a sales rep for several technology companies. That, in turn, became sales rep for security companies, and then sort of got tapped on the shoulder. I'm a bit of a loudmouth. I talk a lot. I have a lot of weird interests. And we were in the process of kind of shifting around the way we were doing our community at my former company, Rapid7, and 3 different people all kind of approached me and said, hey, we're going to be shifting this. We think you'd be a good fit because you're weird, you never shut up, and you know enough about the technology to be personal about it, etc. And also, you probably will do all right with the herding cat mentality that Hillary mentioned before. And so I kind of hit the ground running after that. I mean, I joined the Community Roundtable, which Hillary also mentioned, to try to at least have some sort of idea as to what I was going to be doing, like where I should be looking, what a community manager actually did. And I really haven't looked back. I've just been kind of head down ever since.
Yeah, awesome. Hillary?
Yeah, I mean, similar. I have a very unorthodox path that landed me here. My husband is a small business owner, so when he was getting started, I was helping him with his online presence. I was very attracted to all this new fame-dangled social technology and digital tools. So I sort of took that upon myself to get educated about how we could apply these tools to build and grow his business. Along that path, I was working with a local group who was working to pass some healthcare legislation in New York State. So I brought to the table some of my digital organizing skills, and I was lucky enough to sit across from someone who had a background in traditional community organizing, and we were absolutely fascinated by each other. She wanted to figure out how to apply her traditional community organizing skills in this digital landscape, and I wanted to figure out, I knew there was more than just tools. Like, I wanted there to be more strategy to how I was using these tools. And the end of this happy story is that we passed that legislation, and our ability to put those 2 things together was attributed to our success. And so after that, I was absolutely sold and wanted to keep doing this kind of work. And so I had been following the Community Roundtable as a way to educate myself. And when a position opened up, I jumped on it and fell in love with our co-founders and our business model and our clients, and have been there ever since.
That's awesome, and I'm so glad that everyone has a relationship with the Community Roundtable, because it's something certainly for me as a community manager when I was starting out in Australia in enterprise communities, was really new, and I remember that being an awesome resource. And I also love the founders. Rachel and I have had a lot of fun setting fire to stuff at conferences before, and yeah, I think you guys do a really, really awesome job. And you're my community manager, so that's kind of cool. You're the community manager of all the community managers.
It's true.
You're like the mother of community managers.
You guys are easy on me, though, I have to say. Like, you guys get what it's like, and so I appreciate.
I ask you a lot of dumb questions.
Well,
I ask you a lot of dumb questions.
I actually think they're pretty smart questions, Patrick. But
dumb guy, that's what it is. Smart questions from a dumb guy, that's what it is. You're right. You're right.
Guys, leading on from like the career path and how you kind of got here, you know, for people who are looking at maybe, you know, getting a community manager, whether it's for their enterprise social network or for an external community, you know, what do you think kind of the right skills are, and the right kind of qualities in a person? What do you think they are that lead to having the right kind of personality and skill set for a community manager?
Well, Patrick, you mentioned that you like to talk a lot, and I'll add on to that. I think just basic communication skills are a must. We found when we talk to members, we find people with project management skills make great community managers. A lot of times community managers are handling multiple projects, juggling multiple things. We joke that we're a bit of an octopus. We're juggling with 8 arms at all times. So understanding how to manage all of that can be really helpful. off the top of my head, conflict resolution. Patrick, you got any more?
I totally agree with the project management bit. I would say that's the thing that I use the most. That's the skill set that I actually have developed even more so since I've started. The talk a lot piece, I think, translates directly into you're going to be put in positions where you're going to have conversations that you might not have the best answer for, but you kind of have to keep paddling to make sure that you're driving the engagement that people need, because no one wants to contribute to a community that looks like a ghost town. Like, you have to have some level of discussion, which means, sometimes you got to ask really interesting questions or even silly questions to drive that engagement. And that's sort of, I find this more in my own realm because I do a lot of startup work, but I find that self-starter mentality, that ability to say, all right, here's what my to-dos looks like. I can either get it done now or I can procrastinate. And if you get it done now, if you're able to sort of prioritize yourself, drop everything at the drop of a hat to finish a dramatically difficult project, but then sort of like circle back around and make sure that you're still doing the things that you don't want to do, which could be anything. Could be document cleanup or knowledge base reorganization. That sort of stuff will take you far. The ability to get in there and get your hands dirty.
The other thing I'll add is we've been talking about this a lot in the network, but understanding basic human behavior and motivations. We had a book club. We read The Power of Habit, and Luke, this especially applies to some of your enterprise focus where you're asking people to work differently. You need them to actually adapt new behaviors. So understanding what it takes to change someone's behavior and how to bring them along that journey can be a really important skill set for a community manager too. Absolutely.
Yeah, look, I agree. I agree entirely with everything you guys said. And the inspiration for this session was actually one of my favorite infographics, which is that inside the mind of a community manager. My favorite part is wearing a T-shirt that says "Crush Trolls." There's like a whole lot of elements to that. And if you haven't seen it, I'll post it on our Google Plus page after the talk. But have a look at it because it really talks about some of the skills and the kind of things that are going on inside your community manager's head. I think for me, I was working on projects which we've talked about being a great skill, and they were always like website-based, intranet within usually big kind of corporate companies. And that kind of led me to starting to play around with Yammer originally. For you guys, how have you kind of seen the role of the community manager evolve? So I know for me, in the 4 years since I've been doing this, I really think there's been a big shift in both the perceived value of having a community manager and also the role itself. What do you guys think about that?
So I agree with you on the perceived value portion 100%, in that I think that when I started, it was sort of the person that we had running the community before I took over was someone that was doing it in his spare time. It was one of those things like, we have a community, we don't have a full-time community manager, let's just have this guy do it while he's doing everything else. And I think the legitimacy of the spend around it, the ability to say, all right, our customers are asking for this, or our employees are asking for this, we need to actually invest in the process. And that means having someone that's dedicated to doing this day in, day out. I would say the other things that have shifted along with that legitimacy shift is that you find it a lot more of a conversation piece for that community feedback for customers, in that a good example is one of the customers at my new company. I've been here about 2.5 months. One of their criteria for selecting vendors is, does the vendor have a robust customer-facing or support-specific community? So I think it's become one of those things it's much more internalized to the average company, which is starting to help, obviously, those of us that are community managers or looking to be community managers find the opportunities to continue to expand, continue to grow, take on new roles, etc.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, we see organizations along a great wide spectrum of where they are with understanding what community management is, the need for it, how they apply it to their organization. And what we have now that we didn't have a few years ago is more examples and more mature examples. And so a lot of the early folks, and I do want to say, I want to acknowledge that there are people who have been managing communities for 10+ years. This isn't a totally new thing, but it is a hot thing over the last couple of years that now more people know about. So I think we have better examples. So now we can, early community managers were sort of leading the way and saying, you're going to have to take my word for it. And now we have more case studies, and we can point people towards other programs and show the value that they've created for their organization. I'd like to say that the role has also evolved into being less evangelizing, but I don't know if I can really say that. I think a little bit less. I think 3 years ago when I talked to community managers, they were blown away. You know, nowhere in their job description did it say you're going to spend, you know, a bulk of your time evangelizing internally for your community, and that's what they were doing. I'm thinking that that's happening a little bit less as more education and awareness is around the role and community in general.
I agree with that. I think that that's one of the really big shifts I've seen at my current position from my last position is that I spent a huge amount of my time pretty much being a community admin, you know, deleting problems, blocking spam, the norms. But then I was no longer, I wasn't able to be as distinctly strategic as I wanted to be because I had to explain in a lot of cases why the value was there for people to you know, assist me in the project that I was working on when they had their list of their to-dos that they had to work on as well. Whereas at the new company, I feel like they're bringing me on board. They're in a position of saying we're going to do a community and we're going to do it right, which means if you need something from this cast of characters, just ask and people will do it because we buy into it. You don't have to tell us that we need it. Just tell us what it is, and we'll work on it.
Yeah, awesome. We had one of the viewers, sorry, Sally asked Hillary if you could just repeat the name of the book that you mentioned before that you for your community book review. Oh, it's on display it's on set. That is awesome.
It's The Power of Habit by Charles.
You just made $8.
Duhigg. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his last name correct, but The Power of Habit.
Drop the link into Amazon somehow, but I don't know how to do that. So next time we will.
There's also Nir Eyal. He spells his last name Eyal. Put out a great book that's built off of his work. So that's also a great companion piece to check out.
We had another question from a viewer, Emily. She was asking, you know, how if we have some tips from our experience to kind of for enterprise social communities, you know, how we use the social network to, you know, foster enterprise engagement. I've definitely got a few things to say on that. Maybe Hillary, you have some comments working with your network.
And her question is how to foster just engagement in an enterprise situation, like an employee collaboration
engagement using the solution, using a social network.
Well, I mean, taking it back to talking about changing behavior, you know, I just had an interesting conversation yesterday with a few members, and we were talking specifically about employee networks, and they were talking about the importance. This was a very mature community who had been around for a little while. They had a lot of executive buy-in to support this culture, and one of the things, the way that they seeded that culture from the beginning was encouraging the water cooler area and understanding that this wasn't just a place to do work, and the focus was really to help folks get comfortable with the tools, because really you're teaching people how to work out loud in a public forum, even if this is private in the company, and this is more public. And so allowing people to form special interest groups around maybe they're outside, maybe there's a runner's club or a knitter's circle, whatever, but sort of letting them eke into it, get comfortable, let go of some of the fears they might have about working out loud in front of their company. And then also you need that leadership modeling. You need to be modeling it yourself as a community manager. You need to have some folks in leadership position either blogging or posting, you know, meeting agendas on your network and showing people how the tool can be used.
Absolutely. I agree with both those things. You know, and I think as well, it's really important when you're talking about engaging your employees in the social network is to make it seem really simple and fun, and that plays to what you're saying about having interest groups, not all really serious and complicated, and the training should be really light. Simple training on the top 3 things you need to know on how to use this, and then let the rest sort of take flight. I think that demonstrating the use cases is super important. So people want to know when they're using a new enterprise social tool, collaboration tool, what's in it for me? How is this going to make my job that I do every day easier? I think demonstrating some of those specific use cases is really key to success. I don't know, Patrick, if you have anything to comment on enterprise social employee engagement.
I'm more on the external side, so I typically engage externally. But the thing that I've picked up through the entire kind of experiment is that telling people, pretty much explaining to people that they can be wrong, right? One of the things that ends up being a real sort of showstopper for a lot of people is that they're afraid of doing it wrong, and if they're afraid of doing it wrong, sometimes they don't bother to start. So kind of explaining the parameters behind it to be like, listen, to your point, here's a use case, here's the way we'd like you to do it, but if you do it this way, it's not the end of the world. Like, none of this is going to be the most dramatically destructive thing ever. So just get on there and play around with it, try it out, see what happens. Because that sometimes lifts the burden of people being like, ooh, I don't know if I should do this, I don't know if I should join in yet. I'll wait to see how other people are doing it. Maybe they can show me exactly how to do it.
Cool.
I'll also mention that we found in our research that enterprise community managers are more likely to be found coaching leadership one-on-one to use the tool. So that seems to be an integral part of an enterprise community manager's role. They're going to need a lot of hand-holding to get that first blog post up, to understand how to use it and how to interact with employees. And getting those folks up and running does a lot for general engagement as well.
Absolutely. I mean, this kind of continues on from this, I guess. Community management, as more enterprise customers adopt social tools for their employees to make work better and kind of like get them collaborating in the digital space, and as more companies start to look to the external social sphere and get community managers involved there, we talked about this becoming more legitimate. I mean, do you think this is really like moving to become a strategic part of any business? I mean, how do you see it sort of playing out in marketing or other areas that you get exposed to in your jobs?
On my side, I definitely see it as being strategic, because I think of it as, on the one hand, it's from the marketing standpoint, people talk about the B2B relationship and how companies buy from companies, but at the end of the day, we've all heard the cliche. It comes down to it's people buying from people, right? So if you are providing a real life sort of persona, you're talking about the company, you're marketing what the company is from like an external community perspective, that lends itself to a decision-making process almost across the board. If people not only like the company, but like the people in it, using a company like Apple's a bad example because obviously everyone knows who they are, but at the same time they have a very specific brand and they have a very specific stance on things. They're not the worst at it in the world, right? But on the flip side, I would say the other side of it comes from some of the interactions you have with your customers. In that once they are customers, you're able to have a deeper dive relationship with them, where their feedback becomes that much more legitimate and ends up getting to the product team, getting to the support team, getting to other customers who might not have looked at a problem in a specific way, and that collaborative spirit becomes part of the conversation. It's much more strategic to say, all right, let's split down the middle. We have 50% of our time we're going to work on the projects that we know we have to do in order to stay competitive in our market space. But the other 50% of the time, what are the top 10 things that our customers are complaining about or asking for or wanting tweaks on? What are the things that are going to make their day significantly easier? Because if we complete those and accomplish those customers are significantly more bought in, and they feel like we're really listening to them, which we are.
And everything you just talked about then, Patrick, actually also applies applies internally. You know, when you yeah, exactly. When you have you know, that authenticity where leaders are connecting with employees in their collaboration or social network, you get this enhanced level of engagement. So I think everything that we talk about in external also applies internally. Hillary, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely think that community management is a strategic role, and if you find yourself in a position and you're not acting strategically, I encourage you to make that a better part of your role so that your community can be more successful. I mean, you're really holding the relationships for your organization, whoever your stakeholders are. It doesn't matter if we're talking enterprise-facing or customer-facing. And I think it's absolutely imperative for a community manager to understand, you know, their organization's strategy and goals, their group's organization, their group's strategy and goals, and to be able to link back their community strategy so that's all aligned. And coming from the other end, you're sharing back to your organization what you know about your stakeholders and influencing strategy forward, which is absolutely a key piece of this all.
Don't forget, guys, if you are watching, send through the questions. We're happy to answer questions. We're coming up toward the end of you know, the stuff that we have prepared, the conversation pretty soon. So if you have any questions, I'd love to get the panelists. I told them I was going to make it pretty easy. I'd love some really hard ones. Let's put them on the spot. Watch them squirm. No, that's not true. I'm not going to do that, guys. I guess, like, you know, the final thing is kind of, you know, I think community management, you know, is moving along really quickly. And, you know, you guys, the Community Roundtable, do some awesome research which paints that picture. Where do you think it's kind of going? Like, what does the community manager of the future look like? I know I have a few thoughts, but, you know, I'd love to hear what you guys think first.
Well, I'll go first. So we look at community management as a discipline. You know, out of all our members, not everybody has community manager in their title. And what we really see is management in general adopting more of a community management mindset for the health of an organization. And I think what we'll also see as community managers will be less of, you know, this one dedicated resource. As teams build out, you'll see more specialized role, and community managers will become less of a jack of all trades, and they'll have more specific skill sets that, you know, build into that team. Or at least that's my forecast. We can check back in.
Hillary, I agree with you in the last piece that you said, that there's going to be more specialized people within teams. I kind of am the jack of all trades at the moment, in that I split the difference between, I do work for a marketing department, so communities currently live in marketing for our organization, but at the same time it would make just as much sense for it to live in support. It would make sense for it to live in product. There's a variety of different ways for an external customer-focused community to sort of have its niche within the company. And I think, to your point, I think it's going to become one of those things where you have much more of a, maybe it's a director level person who's associated with external and internal communities, customer facing and company facing, and then you have your specialists in each. You have, you know, the person who's responsible for the support side, taking in support information from your support community and working that through whatever the existing support SLA process is. You've got someone from the marketing team that's like, I'm the marketing community expert. I'm going to put together informative articles that are not salesy. They're just informative. They happen to be about our brand, or they happen to have something within our realm of influence. But these are customers. We're not trying to sell to them anymore. If they want to buy more, rock on. We're not going to fault them for that. But we want to give them information and make them more successful at whatever it is they're doing, whatever it is we're giving to them, whatever we're supporting them in. Here's a way to do that from a marketing standpoint. That breeds that brand awareness, right? So I think, in 10 years, I'm going to be a chief community officer somewhere, or something, and have a team of 70, 80 minions that I can order around at any point in time, make them do my bidding, etc.
That's not very community-minded, Patrick.
It's incredibly community-minded. It's a community of minions. I don't know what you're talking about. I've seen Despicable Me. Those guys are having the blast of their lives.
Yeah, look, yeah, bring on the minions. No, I also, I think that for enterprise community managers, I think this is really the mindset is going to shift to be really a part of everyone's role. Everyone is going to have to think like a community manager in the future. Once you start to move work from, old-fashioned share drives into collaborative environments, and then along comes like process integration with all the bits and pieces that I use to do my work, and it's available on mobile. Everyone has to have this like community manager hat on in order to survive there. And I think, part of that mindset comes with the next generation who it's always has been that way. So I think, yeah, interesting times ahead for community managers, and I know there's going to be a lot more of them popping up in the next few years, especially in the enterprise social realm. We had a question from Christopher, who's a viewer, and he has asked, do we have any tips on how to launch a community manager role in our organization? He's specifically asked for data and ROI.
ROI?
Yeah, and tips on launching, and then what's the ROI?
Well, if it's internal, I'll default to Hillary. If it's external, the ROI that we found to have a lot of impact is both case deflection and customer sat. So if you're doing CSAT tracking and you're paying attention to how your customers are speaking to you about your company, throwing some survey questions into your quarterly or your yearly surveys to ask them specifically if the community is a value add, if interacting with their other peers is helping them, and then from that support ROI thing is support rep A is this expensive, and we deflected this many cases, which is this many hours, etc. That's usually the business case. How to get started with that, how to push that, is typically to just run those numbers. Show whoever it is that's signing checks those numbers. Like, if we have a community that costs us this much per year and it deflects 10% of cases, if we come out even, we're doing better than we are today, right? Because it's more time for those support reps or whoever to spend more time with the accounts that need more time.
Yeah, my 2 cents on launching. Best practice, don't launch big. Start small. It takes a little bit of time. You're going to need to see some organic growth there. Start with a small group and then scale out from there. ROI, I just heard an internal case study yesterday, and one of their exciting cost savings was the community opened up opportunity for peer-to-peer support and deflected tech help costs. So there's potential there. And connect with other community managers in other organizations who are further along that path. Oftentimes companies can't share some of this stuff publicly. You won't hear these details in case studies, but if you have that network, you can pick up the phone and connect with folks and learn a little bit more about the nitty-gritty.
Yeah, absolutely. Connecting, super important. One of our viewers, Chris, he says, is asking, that in his company, a lot of community managers are asked to take on this role as an additional part of their job. They have a day job, I guess, and it's like an extra thing to do. Do we have any advice on how we can help them, how those guys can succeed?
Absolutely. So another role we find, I've heard from a lot of our members, is that they end up acting as internal consultants. So they get these volunteer community managers, these folks who this is just an add-on, something they're interested in, and they're providing support. And so we have a member who started like a quick start guide for these volunteers that sort of just walks them through the basics of community management and gets them rolling. You might also want to think about having a very simple application process so that you don't have communities popping up all over the place and you end up with a land of 1,000 flowers. Because that can be, that sort of gives a bad feeling, like they're empty, there's 5 groups for the same topic, so you want to help manage that and help direct people to each other.
Yeah, and I think another way to make sure people succeed is a lot of people like have this idea like let's have a community manager and let's just like give it as an additional part of someone's role. So it might be like the team assistant or the marketing coordinator will take over the community. But I think what is really important is that it's set up for success by putting some measurements in place. A lot of people have the performance appraisal system where they're getting like setting their goals for the year and then checking in with their manager at certain points. I think for success you need to put something into people's agreements saying this is part of what we expect of you and this is like actually a legitimate and real part of your job. I remember back when I was in Sydney at AMP, I wrote like a short description for our community managers that they could insert into their agreement. So when it came around to review time, there was no surprises like, oh, I spent like 30% of my time doing this. It's like, well, that's what we'd agreed up front. I think that can be really, really, really helpful.
That's a great idea, Luke. I like that.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. I think that it's, if you're at a startup, if you're at a smaller company and you don't have the ability to spend for a completely dedicated community manager, then this is kind of the role that comes up. You've got a dual role person that ends up coming out of that conversation. Yeah, goal it. Just put some money on it, right? If it's bonus, if it's whatever, however your company associates that, just make it legitimate. Be like, this is now part of my job, so that instead of me coming back and saying, hey, I did spend 30 plus hours doing this one project and I had to neglect this other stuff, it's part of your workflow.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. There's just one last question we'll do answer before we wrap up, and that is, how active are we on our own social networks? Do we find that we're always just assisting others to be active, or we're active ourselves? And look, I'll start with my answer to that, and that is absolutely active. And I think for me, working with a customer network that's mostly pretty geographically dispersed, actually global. Part of me helping them is by being active in the community. Back in my experience inside the walls of a company, we still had a geographically dispersed workforce. We spent, it's absolutely true, a bit of time like getting those guys, getting our employees trained and getting them active and helping them to understand kind of the right use of the network, but definitely also involved in there myself. Like every single day, living and breathing that place. I think for you to be a community manager and not involved in that community, it doesn't really work. It doesn't really connect.
Yeah, absolutely. I am. I try really hard to balance out my presence in the network, in our private network, so that it's not my head showing up on every post, but at the same time, I'm definitely driving a lot of that engagement, posting weekly threads, posting reports, posting events. I also doing a lot of like back channeling stuff. Like all of a sudden, 3 awesome people might show up to answer someone's question, and that might look organic, but that was really your community manager going behind the scenes and tapping the right people and making sure they knew that conversation was happening and that we value the member to come and share their experience and expertise.
I've been tapped by you quite a few times on that aspect, Hillary.
I tapped both of you guys.
Hey, Patrick, have you seen this thread where it's something that you might be interested in? All right, rock on.
Like, hey, Luke, check out this new member. Don't you want to go say hi?
I mean, yeah, that's exactly it, though. I'm incredibly active in my own. Similar to Hillary, I don't want it to be the Patrick show, although it would be an awesome show if it was. Don't get me wrong, but I don't want it to be the Patrick show because I want people to be able. People are less likely to answer someone else's question if I'm constantly in there answering everybody's question. Like, I want to breed that level of engagement. But at the same time, that behind-the-scenes sort of shakeout does become much more valuable, right? You've got the ability to say, I am seeing every post and I'm seeing every person and whatnot that's coming in, or me and my team, depending on the size. If it is truly an enterprise-sized community, then you've probably got a group of people that are doing that. But those people are much more in tune to saying, you know what, there's something I remember about this person talked to that person, they're both on the same page, and doing that in a way that it's not, hey everybody, look at me doing this. I think that ends up being much more valuable in the long run.
I actually have a fun story about enterprise. engagement where there is a large enterprise, I can't say the company, but they put up a mascot, has a profile, and nobody in the company knows who manages the mascot profile. They assume it's the community manager, but the community manager swears it's not them. And it's sort of an exciting thing when the mascot comes and comments on your blog or, you know, answers your question, that sort of thing. So it's sort of a fun way that a community manager could help facilitate some engagement in a unique and creative way.
It's a really good idea, actually. Suddenly there's a Cloudlock mascot. You're like, oh, I have no idea where that came from.
It's not me.
There is another question when it's around metrics, and it's sort of like asking if we can give some examples of metrics. And to be honest with you, it's a whole nother topic. We could talk an hour on metrics. And,
Hillary, take it.
If Christopher, if you want to shoot me a message on Google Plus afterwards, I'm happy to start up a separate conversation. But it's really cultural, and it's really something that a lot of people are like trying to figure out. With that, I think we're going to wrap up for today. Guys, I really want to thank you both for joining me. I'm sorry that Ted couldn't get the sound working, but thanks, Ted, as well. Maybe we'll get you in another day. So thank you. Thanks for coming on, and I'll see you in the community roundtable. We'll have to start up a discussion about this or something.
Hillary will take care of that. Hillary's going to tap us both on the shoulder.
I'll tap you both after this call.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on.
Bye, guys.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
you. I just want to say before we go that keep a lookout on the Sitrion Talks website. We have next month coming up Anne Bartlett-Bragg, who's a friend and partner of ours. She is dialing in from Sydney, Australia, and she's going to talk about the advantage of user-generated content. She presented this session at our collective in Sydney, our customer conference in Sydney in May, and it was so awesome. I was like, how do we figure out a time when you're awake and everyone in the US is at work so we can repeat it for this audience? And the clocks are changing in Australia in a couple of weeks, and we found the right date. So keep an eye out for that one. It's going to be an awesome session, and yeah, I can't wait to see you online then. Thanks very much.